Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going? Cool.
Did anybody else have anything for the agenda? I put a couple things down.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I saw that.
Yeah, I don't think anything. Yeah, I think these are good topics to chat about.
Cool. Elizabeth is lurking. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Do you want to just say who you are for anybody who hasn't met you yet?
Yeah, so I work with Judith. I'm one of the developer advocates over on the community team for DCOS and Mesos.
Sweet, thanks.
Well, I can go ahead and start since I've got a couple items down there.
Cool.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was something that came up in some conversations around our office the other day that seemed like a really good idea to me as a way to improve community development, get more involvement in the Mesos open source community, and that's just to renew our efforts at Mesosphere to push as many conversations as possible into open source Mesos forums, and really try to make especially the working groups the focal point of feature development. I think the containerization working group is a good example of where that has been happening. And I think there are stakeholders from a variety of companies who have real interest in that area, so that's helped facilitate it. But I think even when all of the people working in a particular area are in one company, it would be good if as much as possible we can have discussions in open source Slack and make use of the working groups to develop those features. And that might mean that we can actually spin up a new working group or two as we work on some new initiatives. I think if we're going to be doing any API work in the future, having an API working group would be great. And I think with the API working group, it might also be a situation where we could have a working group established that doesn't necessarily have regular meetings, but could meet on an ad hoc basis as it's appropriate to handle new issues or features that come up. Like one thing that came up recently was I think Jan Schlicht was adding a new Get Operations API call. And I think just the fact that a new API call was being added, it kind of occurred to us like, oh, it'd be nice if we had some single entry point for people who are adding or changing any APIs where they could let the maintainers and stakeholders know, and then we could have some kind of review process that makes sure that all of these changes to the API are happening in a consistent way. So like an API working group might be the kind of thing where the organizer of that working group could be a maintainer who's notified of all such API changes, and then when we have a couple items to discuss, they could let people know and we could hold a meeting to discuss those. So that's just one specific example, but I think the overall message is that we here at Mesosphere are going to, I think, increase our efforts to push development into working groups. James, I would be interested to hear from you, like how much you guys at Apple make use of working groups and other open source forums versus internal discussions. Do you think that you guys have any room that you can improve there, or are you doing a pretty good job of that already?
I wouldn't say we're doing a pretty good job. So I usually participate in the containerization working group, and I've found that's got an interesting forum. I don't really have much to say about other Apple contributions.
Do you think that opportunities exist at Apple for you guys to have more discussion in open source forums, be it Slack or working groups or otherwise, or maybe some of the discussions you guys are having are necessarily internal? Maybe you don't know.
I don't see a lot of discussions in Apple about Mesos stuff specifically.
Okay.
I think that if there were more discussions and more information coming out from the community, there'd be people at Apple who would kind of consume that. But mostly, I struggle to think of Apple really driving any of these things.
Okay. Well, I think we'll be putting some effort into that here, and certainly letting the mailing lists and Slack know about any working group meetings that occur. So if you guys catch wind of anything that interests you, of course, we would love to see Apple folks on board.
So, James, even if you guys don't drive them, would you think there'll be interest if we spin up, let's say, like an API working group as a forum where you guys could come up and ask questions or discuss questions about APIs and stuff? Do you think that would be a good forum to discuss API related things?
I think the API working group would be a really helpful community resource, because the number of people who are going to consume the API and the number of other projects that can give input to the API is much larger than kind of almost all the other working groups. So I think the API working group would be very, very helpful. I actually think there might be a couple of people at Apple who would be willing to participate in that.
Cool.
I think Dario probably has a lot of feedback from API, at least.
Got it. Yeah. My only concern would be trying to figure out who would be the person that's going to own it and drive it. Ideally, it would be me, but I am strapped on time. So I'm trying to figure out if I take on that role, would I be doing justice to drive those meetings? That's my only concern. If there's someone else who would be willing to drive it, that would be ideal. But if no one,
is there someone you could delegate it to? Like maybe somebody who doesn't have the 100% okay, yes or no, this is a good change, but might be able to do the administrative part of it and kind of set the agenda and stuff?
I guess we need to ask on the mailing list or Slack channel to see who would be willing to do that. So we have the HTTP API channel. I'm guessing most of the interested stakeholders are already on that channel. So we can ask on the channel to see who would be willing to take up that, and see if someone wants to do the day-to-day of it. I'd love to participate. But yeah, I'm just trying to understand if I would have time to set up agenda and trying to coddle folks into talking about stuff and all that good stuff. That's my only worry about this particular working group. So I guess actually the next action item should be we should ask this question on the Slack channel, HTTP API Slack channel, and see if there's anyone who is willing to go on it or do the day-to-day of it. But yeah, I think I agree with James and Greg that API working is probably one of the things that's probably going to be really useful to have wider participation, because it's going to impact schedulers, operators, users, everyone. So it's worthwhile having that working group spun up, as long as we have some people who take responsibility to drive it.
Cool. Andy and Gilbert, if you just joined, we're talking about potentially doing more work in public working groups and spinning up maybe API working group as the first one to meet ad hoc when people want to make changes. And we're trying to figure out who might want to be the working group leader. So if you guys are interested, let us know. And silence.
I like the idea. I'm not going to volunteer to be leader, though. I'm probably the wrong person for that. But no, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I totally agree. So I might not be leading the API working group, but we might have some like on-demand API working group meeting, or like monthly working group meeting. Because if you identify all the public-facing or user-facing API in Mesos, which I think many people are gonna be interesting on that, and especially for release. So every release we have the upgrade file, upgrade.md. So those are API changes, which include like some API deprecation, API remove, or introducing some new API. So I would say like if we have some API working group information posted online, so if some other Mesos user, they can find the YouTube video, it might be super helpful for them to find the latest change on API. And also we might have some other plan for API in the future, especially right now we have the gRPC support. So some people in community, they start to ask about like what's our plan on the V2 API, and some company like Uber, they want to like go all in with the gRPC, so they would like their other API like the weather scheduler or some others, they would like to investigate if it is possible to rely on gRPC calls to talk to Mesos master. So those are some potential discussion on for the API working group. And I guess we don't have more concern about that.
Yeah, I was just chatting before you joined, Gilbert. So I'll probably send an email first to a mailing list and maybe a message to the Slack channel to float the idea and see if there are any volunteers, and then we'll see. Maybe I'll start off with leading it the first few meetings before we find someone else to lead it, or maybe I can co-lead it with someone else to share the time load. But yeah, I'd love to spin that up.
Awesome. I'm going to assign this bullet point to you, Vinod.
So I think that's everything I wanted to bring up for that that agenda item, unless there's anything else about working groups that anybody wants to discuss.
I guess the next question is, are there any other working groups that we think would be valuable to spin up? This was one. Are there anything else in people's minds that you think you would have a lot of people joining and would be interesting to spin up, where the discussions are already happening?
I wonder if a operators working group would be helpful. The problem I can see is getting operators to join the working group, but it, in theory, would be a pretty useful resource, I think.
Like our group for operators specifically?
Yeah. So people operating Mesos. So operations teams, SRE teams, that kind of thing. So collecting resources about how you successfully operate Mesos, how a group where people can bring their problems and get feedback and assistance.
So it's
Yeah,
just a more user-targeted working group than like a developer-targeted working group.
Yeah, a little bit more user-targeted.
I think that would be really cool if there were, like, I guess first of all, a user or two interested in owning it, like someone who's actively operating a significant deployment who wants to own it, and then even just a few interested attendees. I mean, that could be a good place for operators to share concerns and common experiences that might actually lead to good communications to other working groups in terms of needed features or bug reports. But it seems to me like it's dependent on sufficient interest from the relevant people. Do you guys have anybody in mind who might be a good participant or a good owner for that group?
I can't really think of anyone. Maybe maybe Uber or one of the other operators could be interested. It's probably something where you need 2 or 3 people to co-own it in order to get enough bandwidth to make it interesting.
Sounds good. So maybe, I guess it might be a good place to start to either email directly people who we think might be interested in leading it, or just put out a call on the mailing list and say, hey, would you be interested in participating in this if it existed, just to see if we would get enough participation to make it worth spinning up.
Yeah, I think an email on the users list could be good, and I might suggest if it does end up happening, it would be good to have a committer, like liaison, who's willing to attend those meetings, so that there's an active representative from the committers pool who can just help communicate the results of those meetings to other folks. So maybe we can see if there's any interest on the mailing list when that email goes out and take it from there.
All right, since it was my suggestion, I'll take the action to solicit some operators.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. I'm going to just assign this to you.
I also wonder about a storage working group. I feel like some of the features that were implemented for storage were discussed in the containerization working group, but not all. So it might be... G was actually someone who brought this issue up in a meeting the other day. So I'll reach out to G this week and ask him if he thinks that would be valuable or appropriate. I suspect there's enough development still going on there that it would be a useful thing to have and to bring out into the open a little bit. And maybe we have, maybe he would have a person or two in mind to own that. He already owns the containerization working group, so he may not want to take another one on, but I expect we could find somebody. So I'll chat with G about that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. I think that's a great idea. I wonder if some of the development there also had overlap with the CSI meetings that G runs or participates in.
Yeah, I think they were definitely related, and the Mesos development was influenced by the results of the CSI group.
Sweet. Does anybody have any other thoughts on possible productive groups? I was thinking maybe, I don't know how far along the work on maintenance mode is, but I hear questions about it all the time, and it might be something to consider.
I know we have people trying to use maintenance mode. I don't know how successful they've been. Somewhat successful, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think there are enough people using maintenance either. There's probably one or two companies using it, as far as I know. Once it becomes more popular and active work being done, I think it's probably worthwhile thinking about it then. And that's probably also something that could be, I guess, talked about in the operators working group too, because it's kind of related to operations itself. Mostly will be used by operators when doing maintenance. So that's something that could be part of operator working group or operations working group, whatever we're going to call it.
Yeah, I guess it's operators working group if it's for users, and operations working group if it's for devs.
One thing I would like to ask about the working groups is whether anyone's had any thoughts about increasing their visibility. At least I'm a regular Linux Weekly news reader, so they have a whole section with links to various meetings and status updates from projects. So a lot of projects run like the LXCD weekly news or GCC weekly news or something like that. So they'll link to status updates from various projects. Is that something that you guys have considered for working groups or the status email that Greg organized?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea for the monthly email. That's actually the next agenda item that I put down, was to discuss that email, and I would certainly be interested in including working group updates in that. I think, Ben, you've been sending out some updates regarding the performance working group, is that right?
I tried to, yeah, I mean, I sent one. And we could send another one, but people have just been too busy to do that. But yeah, I mean, I called it a performance report, but I think actually in retrospect, it maybe would have been better to title that as the thing that we did rather than as a report. Like title it as faster master failovers in 1.5 or something like that instead of, December performance report. Just to get more interest.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So we were going to do that with the next one, but there hasn't been, right now I think Michael and Meg are pretty busy, so it's been hard to make that happen.
So having a full-on blog post like that with results from working groups is awesome. I wonder if it also might be worthwhile for me to just have a list of working group owners whom I contact once a month for summaries of the main items of discussion and plans that are materializing through the working group, and include a summary of that in the email. Does that seem useful?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really good.
That's a really easy thing that would not take very long to do.
Yeah, and it would be nice to just link out to the working group agendas where they have the schedule and the join link, just in case anybody is interested in getting involved with the work that they hear about in the newsletter. Do we have an upcoming newsletter for this month, Greg? Have you started on it, or do?
Yeah. Well, should we just move on to that item now?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Yeah, I guess what I wanted to ask, my plan for the January email was to link to the 1.5 release blog post, but since that has not come out yet, I was trying to figure out what I should do. I would love to squeeze something in for this month just to keep it going. But actually contacting people about working groups and including some brief summaries on that stuff seems to me like something pretty quick that I could do within the next day or two and get it out. So I think that's one option. And, I could kind of mention the upcoming release, just update on the progress, that we had an RC and a vote, and that an email is forthcoming. And then I could just have links to the working group agendas with a few notes on progress in the working groups. Does that sound like a reasonable email? Do you guys have any other thoughts on what I might include in a last-minute email here at the end of the month?
Yeah, I think working groups and release, they sound like great topics to add in the email. I can't think of anything else. Maybe, are there any other dockathons or anything scheduled? Or
I think the next dockathon isn't for a while at this point.
Okay.
But I could certainly just have a summary of the dockathon that we did recently.
Yeah, maybe just a summary, like how many people participated, how many doc changes went in, and how it was awesome and stuff like that would be good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I think there should be enough topics, I guess, for the month.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for driving that one. It's awesome.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. So is 1.5 not going to be out until February then?
So we got a couple milestones and we got a new broker issue for 1.5. So I'm gonna cut the RC2 once that broker issue gets in. So yeah, so the release is very likely happen in February, early February.
That's good. Cool. Sweet. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to discuss?
Nope. I guess, Judith, you and me are look at the Medium blogging for the rest of the meeting if you don't have any more topics.
Yeah, I figured we might take that on offline. I'm not sure it's really necessary for everybody in the world to watch us set up a Medium blog, but if we have extra time, that would be a great thing to do with it.
So are you guys going to set it up so that we can publish new blogs on Medium in the future? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so the idea is to set it up so that we'll still publish everything on the Apache Mesos website blog, and then we will be cross-posting it on Medium. And that way we can have a little bit more visibility into people liking it and sharing it. Authors can see if their blog is popular or not. And it just looks a little bit more trendy and shiny and new, but the upside of Medium is they let you do a canonical link, so you can basically like attribute all the SEO results to Mesos's website, even though the blogs are cross-posted on Medium. So any shares or likes that they get will kind of bump Apache Mesos' website SEO
That
or
sounds
whatever
perfect.
it is. Yeah. So the upside is maybe more visibility, maybe a shinier looking blog. The downside is if you want it cross-posted on Medium, you'll have to either post it twice or ask me to post it, or we'll figure out the process. But I think the first step is just setting up a publication.
Well, yeah, I think that's all I had for the meeting. So I guess that's it. We can end early.
Sweet. Yeah, that's it. We can end early. Thanks, everybody. And the notes are up and the recording will be up later. And we'll see
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, Judith.
Thanks, all. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.